Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jordan. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for stopping by. Alright, so today, this lens has been out for forever. I never actually did like an official review for it, so we're going to go ahead and do this. This is the Canon EF 50mm f1.4, so let's go ahead and get into it. Now, this lens has been out for God knows how long. I actually picked this up because I had the f1.8 and I wanted to see if there was really truly a difference between this lens and that lens, which is why I purchased this. So let me go ahead and kind of give you a rundown on this. If you're interested in one of these, this may be helpful to you, so just bear with me on this. This is going to be a little bit of a longer lens review, so let's go ahead and dive into it. Now, brand new, $399 on Canon's website. I've seen them on B&H and Adorama for the same price. Refurbished on Canon's website is $319. I have seen these used on eBay and the Facebook Marketplace for around $200 to $250. So depending on how you want to purchase this, if you bought it from Canon refurbished, you obviously would get a warranty on that. So just keep that in mind. Actually, when I purchased this, I purchased mine refurbished from Canon, and I actually wound up having to send this back to Canon to have them check out the focus ring on it because it was making some crazy noises. And I hadn't got charged or anything. They sent it back in a week or so. They, I think, swapped out something inside of it, so something to consider. So this has the ultrasonic motors. I'm not really 100% sure exactly what differs between this one, the f1.8 and the f1.2, but I will say that this has a full-time manual focus even when you are in autofocus. So if you're in autofocus, I don't know if you guys can hear this. Oh, I didn't mean to take a photo. That's the noise you get in photos, but I can still turn this and I can still focus it even though it's in autofocus, which is nice, especially if you know that you don't have prime focus right there. So just something to consider. The autofocus noise, and I'm not sure why it's so weird in videos, but let me see if I can get it to focus. I don't know if you can really hear that. And this may just be my lens. I'm not sure if it's everybody else's lens. But it makes that noise. And when you're recording video, you will hear it. It's not super audible unless you're just using the audio from the camera, so take that into consideration too. If you have it on a gimbal or a Steadicam, or if you're just hand holding it and you're capturing audio from a secondary source, I don't think that it should be a huge issue. You might notice a little bit of focus breathing for autofocusing, but it's something just to consider too, because a lot of the older lenses are going to have a lot of focus breathing, so something to consider. It has an 8 rounded blade aperture in it. So what I will say, and I'll get into image quality and stuff here in a little bit, but it does have a very big cat's eye bokeh. So I'm not going to ruin it for you right now, but I will get into it a little bit. So just remember that it does have very large cat's eyes for an f1.4. So something to keep in mind if you're looking for super fancy bokeh. So the body of this lens is made entirely out of plastic. It does have a metal lens mount on it as well. I don't know why Canon chose to go all plastic, but I guess maybe if they were just trying to save weight, because of the glass that's inside of it is pretty big compared to the f1.8. It does have a 58mm filter thread, so just something to keep in mind. I know that the kit lens also uses the 58mm filter thread, and the 75 to 300 also uses the 58mm filter thread too. So it uses a lot of glass, and the glass is pretty hefty, which I think is why they went with a plastic construction. If it were me, I would have tried to go aluminum, but I don't know. It's a $400 lens. Do you really think that they're gonna throw plastic or metal onto it. I think metal obviously probably would have cost them a little bit more. So right now I want to talk about image quality. Now, I first shot this all on the Canon EOS Rebel SL3, and then I switched over to the Canon EOS RP. So we'll go ahead with the APS-C size sensor with this lens first, and then we're going to go ahead and jump into the EOS RP full frame sensor with this as well. So let's go ahead and jump into that. So I can tell you right off the bat, f1.4 through f1.8 is pretty much all soft around. There is a lot of ghosting, especially at f1.4. You're also going to get a lot of purple color fringing and vignetting. Stop down to f2.8 and you're going to notice a lot more sharpness all around. Vignetting starts to kind of go away. I did notice that at f5.6, which is probably its prime aperture, you have greatness sharpness all around. I mean, it's tack sharp image all the way from the center to the corners. At about f9, you really notice the vignette to actually disappear entirely. And then at an f16, sharpness from diffraction kicks back in. Now, I did notice on the full frame it's a little similar but a little different as well. So let me go ahead and jump into that. So for similarities, f1.4 through f1.8 is pretty much soft all around. You do have a lot of ghosting, a lot of purple color fringing, and a lot of vignetting. F1.4, I mean, you're going to have straight vignetting all around, so just consider that as well. I shot this without any profile corrections on the camera. I took them all off the camera, and then I also took them off in Lightroom just to make sure that there was no corrections added. So same thing, full frame, f2.8, you get sharpness all around, the vignetting starts to disappear. So actually, and this is just my findings, I don't know if it's for everybody, maybe how I did the testing was a little different, but at an f4.5 on full frame, I actually noticed that the sharpness was great all around. So comparative to the APS-C sensor, which was a 5.6, this one was an f4.5. Same thing, basically at f9 the vignette basically disappears, and then at f18 the softness from diffraction starts to kick back in. So I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about the bokeh and the close-up image quality. Now, I kind of touched on the bokeh a little earlier, so this is where I kind of wanted to give you more of a rundown. So at f1.4, it offers like a really big cat's eye. It's not a very round bokeh. And then basically, if you stop down to an f1.6 or stopping down even lower than that, the bokeh turns into a hexagon, and it's like super weird, and like it almost makes you want to never shoot at like an f1.6 or an f1.8, just because if you go that route and you're stopping down, you're getting these like weird hexagon shapes in your background. And then as far as like close-up image quality goes, I've done a lot of product photos and stuff with this lens specifically. Even when I had the EF f1.8, this lens I always chose just because I had a larger aperture and it was in a more expensive lens. The image quality for sharpness and a close-up imaging is good in the center, but there is a lot of ghosting, especially at an f1.4, which is why I was saying, like, if you stop down to an f1.6 or an f1.8, you get these weird hexagon shapes. So I mean, entirely up to you. That really isn't pleasing to the eye, and it kind of makes for like you never really wanting to shoot at an f1.4. I mean, this could just also be my lens specifically, so I'm not really 100% sure, but that's just what I've noticed with this lens specifically. So another thing too, this is nice aperture wise because it's an f1.4. This would actually be a pretty good astro lens for anybody. Like, let's say that you already owned this and you were getting into astrophotography. If you have a full frame camera, I think that this lens would be pretty decent, especially if you can find it used. The f1.4 aperture on this is pretty good. Definitely going to get a heck of a lot of light in. So just something to consider. A very good portrait lens. The nice thing is so even though the filters are a little bit more expensive because they're 58 millimeters, they're not as big as like 62, 67, 76s, 78s, 80s. But this is definitely a step up from the f1.8. Now I have been doing some stuff with the Canon RF f1.8. So comparatively from this lens to that lens, that f1.8 for the Canon mirrorless systems is a hell of a lot sharper. I can guarantee you that much. Even in an f2, the RF f1.8 compared to this EF 1.4, I mean, the RF f1.8 just knocks it out of the water. So something to consider if you are upgrading or plan to be upgrading to full frame mirrorless in the future. Just keep it into consideration. You may just want to pass on this if you're planning to upgrade to mirrorless and just go straight f1.4 and then just go straight RF f1.8 to that extent. Maybe try selling this one and get your money back from it, but it's a decent lens. There's just a lot of downsides to it, I would say, and one of them being the ghosting at f1.4, the hexagon shape bokeh at f1.6 and below, or stop down, and I mean just a lot of vignetting. There is some barrel distortion too. I noticed that as well, that without profile correction on here, you do have a pretty decent barrel distortion. Now it's not super crazy, but just something to keep in mind, especially if you are planning on picking one of these up. You may just want to stick with the f1.8. Honestly, I don't see there being really any reason to upgrade to the f1.4, but it is still a good lens. If you can find them used for pretty cheap, I would say maybe pick one up just to have it, especially for the much better low light capabilities over the f1.8. But either way, I mean, it's a stop of light between the f1.8 and the f1.4, so is it really that much different? It's entirely up to you, but hopefully this helps anybody out there looking at this lens specifically. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'll answer them to the best of my abilities. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, also give it a thumbs up. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit all the buttons, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.